What if I told you the game was lost before you ever had the chance to play? Not because you made bad choices, not because you didn't work hard enough, but because someone, long before you were born, designed the system to keep you exactly where you are. You were born into a reality that was already scripted, a reality where the rules you follow were written by people you will never meet. They don't wear suits, they don't appear on camera, but they control what you see, what you think, and what you believe to be true. This isn't a game of chance, it's a game of control. And while you chase paychecks, promotions, and promises of freedom, they manipulate the very structure of money, time, and power. They don't earn money, they create it. They don't follow the law, they write it. They don't fear the system, they are the system. You were taught to obey, to consume, to compete, but never to question, never to ask who benefits from the way the world works. Because the moment you do, the illusion starts to crack. This illusion is beautiful, polished, seductive. It tells you if you just work harder, stay loyal, follow the plan, someday you'll make it. But the truth is far more brutal. The elite never played the game you were forced into. They operate in silence, in shadows, in loopholes built for them and only them. While the world is distracted by news cycles, social media, and economic chaos, they pull the strings behind the curtain. This isn't about politics, it's about power. A kind of power that isn't voted in, because it was never up for vote. A power that doesn't make noise because it doesn't need to. And while you struggle to survive, they're playing by a different set of rules. Rules you were never allowed to learn. Rules that were hidden, forbidden. But tonight, that changes. Because once you see the code, you can never unsee it. And everything you thought you knew about success, freedom, and money starts to collapse. But before you discover what those secret rules are, there's something you need to understand first. Something far more disturbing. Because if this system was built to keep you blind, then awakening is an act of rebellion, and awakening doesn't happen alone. There is something powerful that the elite cannot control, something beyond money, beyond influence, beyond manipulation. It's your spirit, your faith, your connection to something higher. They built a world designed to make you feel small, powerless, alone. But you are not alone. If you're watching this and something inside you is stirring, if your soul feels the weight of a truth you can't yet explain, leave a prayer in the comments. Not just for yourself, but for everyone who feels trapped in this invisible war. We will read every single one, and yes, we will pray with you. Because when we unite through faith, no system, no elite, no false god of money can silence that light. So like this video if it woke something up inside you. Subscribe if you know this isn't just content, it's a mission. And comment below with your prayer, your cry, or even just one word, awake. Together, we are breaking the code. Together, we will not be ignored. This is just the beginning. They told you to work hard, follow the rules, trust the system. They promised you freedom at the end of the line. But what if that promise was a lie? What if the system was never built to free you, but to contain you? You were programmed to lose. From the moment you opened your eyes in this world, you were placed inside a framework so meticulously crafted that you couldn't even see it. School wasn't designed to educate you. It was designed to condition you, not to think but to obey, not to question but to comply. It taught you just enough to serve the machine, and not an inch more. The debt you were encouraged to take? That wasn't a mistake, that was by design. Student loans, credit cards, mortgages, chains disguised as progress. You were never meant to get ahead. You were meant to stay tired, compliant, and afraid to stop moving. They didn't want you curious. They didn't want you conscious. Because once you start asking the right questions, the whole illusion starts to fall apart. Who built this system? Who profits from your labor, your time, your exhaustion? The elite. Not the celebrities they parade on your screen, not the politicians they pretend you chose. I'm talking about the real elite, the ones you never see. Families with generational wealth so vast it can't be measured. Organizations older than governments. Networks so deeply embedded into the structure of power that most people wouldn't believe they exist. But they do, and they are the architects of your reality. While you memorize history, they rewrite it. While you chase money, they control its value. While you vote, they select the choices. And the cruelest part, they made you believe you were free. They made you believe it was your fault you didn't win. That if you failed, it was because you didn't try hard enough. But how can you win a game that was rigged before you were born? This isn't capitalism. This isn't democracy. This is a designed matrix of financial slavery, and you are not the player. You are the resource. Your energy, your focus, your belief in the system, that's what fuels their machine. And as long as you believe the lie, they remain untouchable. Above laws, above nations, above consequence. This is not just economic manipulation. This is spiritual warfare. They don't just want your money. They want your mind, your silence, your submission. Because if enough people wake up, if enough people start to see through the veil, the entire structure collapses. And they know that. That's why they distract you with entertainment, flood you with fear, divide you with ideology. Because a divided people can't fight a unified power. They show you violence, but hide the real weapon, information. The truth they bury is far more dangerous than any bomb. Because truth awakens, and awakened minds are uncontrollable. You were never supposed to find this video. You weren't supposed to question why you trade 40 hours a week for just enough to survive. You weren't supposed to realize that the game is fixed, that the ladder you've been climbing leads to nowhere. You were meant to comply, not awaken. But something led you here. Something inside you is still alive, still burning. If that voice inside you is whispering, "This can't be right," you're not alone. Comment below. They control everything. Because saying it out loud is the first act of resistance. And now, for the first time, you're beginning to see what they never wanted you to see. You're stepping outside the boundaries of your programming. You're remembering what it feels like to think for yourself, to feel the weight of a truth that doesn't come from a screen, but from something deeper. They'll call it conspiracy. They'll tell you you're crazy. They'll mock, censor, suppress, because fear is the last defense of a collapsing lie. But if you're still here, still listening, you're not one of them. You're not asleep. You're not broken. You were just never given the real rules. And what happens next depends on whether you're ready to see the rest of the code. They taught you the rules, not the real ones, the ones they let you believe in. You were told to define success by titles, trophies, and taxable income. You were told freedom was a flag, money was security, and education was empowerment. But behind every lesson was a lie. Behind every truth, a trap. Because those ideas weren't born from wisdom. They were constructed, engineered, designed not to liberate you, but to contain you, to give you just enough comfort to stop asking questions, and just enough struggle to keep you busy forever. The hidden system begins with perception. They didn't need to chain your body. They just needed to shape your mind. From your first steps into the classroom, the programming began. Sit still, don't question, memorize, repeat, be obedient, be on time, stay in line. They called it education, but it wasn't built to elevate. It was built to standardize, to mold minds into predictable patterns, and to quietly eliminate the dangerous ones, the independent thinkers, the rebels, the visionaries. You never learned about wealth creation. You never learned about compound control, generational structures, or economic leverage, because those aren't lessons. They're secrets, and secrets, by definition, are not for everyone. Banks taught you how to borrow, not how to build. They showed you how to take on debt, not how to escape it. They marketed credit like freedom, while quietly locking millions into quiet financial servitude. The media, meanwhile, was never there to inform. It was built to distract, to pacify, to manufacture consent. What you think is news is carefully filtered narrative. What you call entertainment is spiritual sedation, because an informed population is unpredictable, but a distracted one, easily herded, easily sold, easily controlled. All of it, your beliefs, your habits, your ambitions, were sculpted to fit inside an invisible architecture. A manipulated reality so complete, you didn't just live in it, you defended it. That's the brilliance of the design. They taught you to guard your own prison, to shame those who ask questions, to laugh at those who notice the patterns, to label them crazy, paranoid, conspiracy theorists. But ask yourself, who invented that word? And why are the most dangerous truths always the most aggressively mocked? The truth is, the system only works when you believe it's real. The second you stop believing, the power begins to fracture. Because their control is not enforced by weapons or walls. It's maintained through rituals of repetition, through symbols, signals, and cycles that keep the collective asleep. They don't rule with force. They rule with familiarity. The symbols are everywhere, on your money, your screens, your buildings. You pass them daily, not realizing they are signposts of ownership, marks of an ancient agenda still in motion. You think you choose, but your options were selected. You think you know the game, but you were only shown the pieces, not the board. And those who try to expose the full layout, they vanish, they're erased. silenced not with violence but with invisibility. This is the nature of unseen power. It doesn't demand your fear. It simply erases alternatives, so you forget there were ever other paths. So the matrix becomes not a prison, but a comfort zone. But comfort is the enemy of awareness. And the moment you begin to feel uncomfortable, disoriented, disillusioned, that's not failure, that's awakening. Because something inside you remembers that this version of life was never natural. It was never yours. It was handed to you, wrapped in authority but hollow at its core. And now the cracks are showing. More people are seeing what wasn't meant to be seen. The financial trap, the social ritual, the spiritual blindfold. They call it life. But what if it's just a holding chamber? What if your dreams were never yours to begin with? What if your desires were designed for you, packaged by systems that profit from your chase? What if this version of freedom was only ever meant to keep you in motion, but never arriving? Because the real wealth code, the one the elite protect with bloodlines, silence, and centuries of deception, is not taught. It's inherited, encoded, and ruthlessly hidden from anyone outside their circle. But pieces are beginning to leak, patterns are becoming visible, and what once was hidden is now harder and harder to ignore. You're not imagining the feeling that something's wrong. You're not paranoid for sensing the pattern. You're only beginning to see the surface of something deeper and darker, something they never expected you to notice, something that, once seen, you can never forget. And just beyond this veil, just beyond this moment, a new layer begins to unravel. You were told success was about hard work, that if you sacrificed enough, stayed in line, and played by the rules, you'd eventually make it. But what if the rules were never meant to apply to those who already won before the game began? What if there's a second set of rules, one you were never allowed to learn? Because the truth is, the elite don't play the same game. They never did. They don't clock in. They don't wait for raises. They don't chase promotions or pray for retirement. They build entities, not resumes. They operate in a separate reality, one with codes, rituals, and strategies hidden from the rest of the population. They create companies that don't pay taxes. They move money through invisible pipelines across continents. They speak a language made of trusts, offshores, holding structures, asset shields, digital currencies. While you budget groceries, they leverage capital you don't even know exists. While you're taxed for every dollar you earn, they're rewarded for every dollar they borrow. And they borrow trillions. Debt doesn't imprison them, it empowers them. This is not about greed, it's about control. They understand something you were never meant to discover. The code behind how power is generated, multiplied, and locked away. It's a system of dark knowledge passed down in silence, never taught, never televised. You won't find it in school. You won't see it in mainstream media, because those institutions were designed to keep this information from reaching you. There are rituals, economic, legal, symbolic, that shield them. Entire financial religions built around loopholes you were programmed to think are too complex to understand. But complexity is the mask. Behind it lies intention, design, deliberate architecture. Ask yourself, why do the richest people in the world pay less in taxes than the average worker? Why do billionaires gain more wealth during crises while the rest of the world bleeds? Why are they always 5 steps ahead of a crash, a law, a collapse? Because they are not reacting to the system. They are writing it. They fund the politicians who write the policies. They control the banks that create the money. They sit on the boards of institutions that regulate the flow of information. They don't play chess, they own the board. And you were handed a controller that wasn't even plugged in. You were meant to consume, to obey, to hustle for scraps. You were trained to admire wealth, but never understand it. You were told billionaires were lucky, gifted, born with a mindset. But mindset without access is just noise. This has never been about mindset. It's always been about permission. They move in silence, using systems you were never shown, trust funds that never expire, foundations that generate wealth while appearing charitable, entities that own entities until nothing tracks back to them. And all the while, you're drowning in financial quicksand, convinced it's your fault for not swimming harder. This isn't capitalism. This is strategic exclusion. The wealth code is not just about money. It's about time, leverage, power, and secrecy. It's knowing how to make one move that echoes across 100 layers of structure. It's knowing the rituals that open doors you didn't know existed, the kind of doors that don't just lead to more wealth, but to influence, immunity, and escape routes. They don't just use money, they weaponize it. And if you're still wondering why you've never seen this system, why no one taught you these rules, it's because you were never supposed to know. Your ignorance is not accidental. It's necessary. Your confusion is not a side effect. It's the goal, because a confused mind never revolts. A tired mind never questions, and a loyal mind never leaves. But if you're still here, still watching, it means something inside you is beginning to wake up. Something is cracking. You're realizing the truth doesn't hide behind walls. It hides behind beliefs. Beliefs that told you to trust the system. Beliefs that said you just need to work harder. Beliefs that said you were free, but you were never free. You were managed, contained, used. The elite don't fear laws. They design around them. They don't fear exposure. They own the platforms. They don't fear collapse. They profit from it, because their power doesn't exist in the visible. It's embedded in what you've never been allowed to see. If you've ever whispered, now it makes sense. If you've ever thought they control everything, you're not crazy, you're early, and you're about to learn just how deep this design goes. They never needed to chain your hands. They just had to tire your mind. From the moment you entered this world, the design was already in place. Quiet, invisible, absolute. A system not built to elevate, but to wear you down. Every structure you were told to trust, school, money, work, government, even your own sense of self, was forged with one intention: to keep you running in circles while they stayed in control. You were born into a machine that feeds on your focus. It drains your time, your energy, your willpower. And the more you struggle to escape it, the deeper you sink into its gears. But here's the twist that no one dares to say out loud. They don't need to stop you. They just need to keep you busy. Busy producing, busy consuming, busy surviving. You wake up to an alarm you didn't choose, in a city you didn't design, to follow rules you didn't write. You exchange your hours for paper, your potential for routine, and your freedom for security that never really arrives. That's not life. That's a loop, programmed, predictable, and profitable, and for them. This is the hidden system no one told you about. The one designed not to crush you instantly, but to exhaust you over decades. To grind you down just enough that you don't resist, don't question, don't remember who you were before the program began. You are not living inside a society. You're functioning inside a perfectly engineered trap. And who benefits? The elite, not the faces you recognize, not the influencers or frontmen, but the true architects, the silent holders of capital, law, media, and myth. They built the matrix and convinced you it was the real world. They don't need force. They use suggestion. They don't need weapons. They use belief, and their greatest weapon, your willingness to keep going. Every institution that shapes your reality is part of a larger ritual, a spiritual control mechanism masked as progress. Education doesn't awaken, it programs. Finance doesn't empower, it enslaves. Religion doesn't liberate, it divides and governs. You were never asked to think, you were trained to follow, and the beauty of the system, the cruelty of it, is that it makes you blame yourself. You weren't productive enough, you didn't try hard enough, you weren't disciplined enough. That's the final lock on the cage, internalized guilt, the kind that makes you punish yourself instead of questioning the structure around you. You were taught that sacrifice is noble, that suffering is honorable, that burnout is a badge of success. But why? Who profits when you're too tired to resist? Who wins when you chase endlessly and never arrive? The truth is chilling. They already won before the game began. They don't chase wealth. They own the mechanisms that generate it. They don't compete. They create the scoreboard. They don't struggle. They observe as billions burn themselves out for scraps they never intended to share. The matrix isn't a future possibility. It's already here. You live inside it. You breathe it. It's the schedule you follow, the goals you've adopted, the fears you've inherited. It's the quiet despair you carry but can't explain. There's a reason you feel something is wrong. There's a reason the world feels heavier every year. It's not your imagination. It's not bad luck. It's design. You've been taught to see life as a ladder, but that ladder leads nowhere. You climb, you chase, you hope. And just as you reach for freedom, the system rearranges. The rules change. The finish line moves. Because the point was never for you to reach it, the point was for you to keep moving. Meanwhile, above you, out of reach, exists a class of power that doesn't move. They orchestrate. They don't wake up wondering how to survive. They wake up deciding how to shape your reality. They control currencies, rewrite histories, fund wars, collapse markets. And all of it happens while you're stuck in traffic or checking emails. wondering why nothing ever feels like enough. This isn't an accident. It's a ritual, a psychological ritual repeated daily to keep you spiritually asleep, emotionally drained, and financially dependent. You call it ambition, they call it manipulation. You call it hustle, they call it harvesting. And when you break, when you finally collapse under the weight of expectation and fatigue, they call it normal. Because to them, your burnout is background noise. Your suffering is systemic. Your silence is essential. And yet, something inside you is still alive, a faint signal that refuses to be silenced. A quiet voice whispering that this isn't what life was meant to be. That maybe, just maybe, everything you were taught to accept is part of a grand illusion. That maybe the weariness you feel isn't weakness, but resistance. The last pulse of a soul trying to wake up inside a body being drained by a system it never agreed to serve. You're not broken. You're not lazy. You're not crazy. You're awakening. And now that you've seen the cracks in the structure, you'll never look at the world the same way again. Because just beyond this noise, just behind this curtain, something even darker waits to be uncovered. But just beyond this noise, just behind this curtain, something even darker waits to be uncovered. Because if the system was designed to exhaust your energy, your time, your identity, then you must ask yourself one final question. What powers the system itself? What engine keeps this invisible machine running generation after generation, decade after decade without breaking down? The answer is money. Not the bills in your wallet, not the digits in your bank account, but the very concept of money, the symbol, the belief, the code. You've been led to believe that money represents value, that it reflects work, productivity, contribution. But that's the illusion. That's the veil they've placed over your eyes since childhood. Because the real truth about money is far more disturbing, far more dangerous, and far more controlled than anyone dares to admit. Money is not value. It's compliance. It's a mechanism of psychological containment designed to make you believe you're free while keeping you on a leash you can't see. The elite don't use money the way you do. They don't trade their time for it, they don't chase it, they control it, they create it. And here's the most painful part. The money you spend your life working for doesn't actually exist. It's not backed by anything real. It's not wealth, it's a symbol, a digital signal governed by a central authority, issued through a system of debt, and recycled through institutions that were never built to serve you. They give it value with one hand and take it away with the other. Your salary, your savings, your retirement plan, all of it exists within a fabricated game board where you are the last to be paid and the first to be punished. While you budget your expenses and count your hours, they restructure global economies with a single phone call. While you're penalized for overdrafts, they receive bailouts in billions. While you worry about inflation, they manipulate currencies to wipe out generations of progress and profit from the destruction. Money isn't the reward, it's the weapon, a code embedded in the matrix to keep your decisions predictable and your desires manageable. They don't just want you to earn it, they want you to worship it, to sacrifice for it, to link your identity and self-worth to how much of it you have, never realizing you're playing a game whose outcome was scripted centuries ago. The global economy isn't broken, it's functioning exactly as intended, to keep wealth flowing upward and control flowing downward. This is not an economic crisis, it's an economic conspiracy, a ritual played out on stock tickers, balance sheets, and global summits. And unless you understand the real game, you'll spend your life chasing a finish line that was never meant for you. And that's why everything you've been told about money is a lie. You were taught to save it, but not how it's created. You were taught to work for it, but not who truly owns it. You were taught that it's freedom when in reality it's your cage. You were never meant to question what money is. You were meant to believe in it like a religion, to trust that those who issue it have your best interests in mind. But if that were true, why does the gap between rich and poor continue to grow no matter who's in charge? Why are global institutions allowed to fabricate trillions out of nothing while you're punished for overdrawing by a few dollars? What if everything, your rent, your bills, your debts, your goals, were based on a shared hallucination? What if the paper in your hand and the digits in your account were nothing more than a spell, a ritual, a control mechanism encoded into daily life to keep billions working, obeying and never looking up? Because once you begin to question the money, you begin to question everything, and they can't allow that. This is why the topic of money remains sacred, taboo, untouchable, Why you were never taught how it really works, only how to chase it endlessly. Because the moment you understand what it truly is and how it's been used against you, you break the code. You step outside the economic matrix. You no longer play the role they scripted for you. But understanding this truth is not safe. It never was. Because once you see the hidden architecture behind money, once you realize it was designed not to free the masses but to protect the few, there's no going back. The world around you begins to shift. Everything changes. So if what you've heard so far disturbed you, if it rattled something inside your chest that you can't explain, you're not alone. This awakening is spreading, quietly, relentlessly, and what comes next will shatter everything you thought you knew about wealth, value, and control. In the next episode, we will expose what they never wanted you to question, the hidden truth about money, how it was engineered to imprison billions, and to liberate only those who understand the secret blueprint. You've seen the system. You've felt its weight, but you haven't yet seen its core. You're about to. And when you do, it won't just change how you see money. It will change how you see everything. If you've made it this far, type the word unseen in the comments. If you've felt the veil lift, just a little, drop the phrase, money is the weapon. And if you're ready to see the truth they buried centuries ago, write, I want the code. Because what comes next was never meant to be revealed. If something inside you stirred while watching this, if you felt a presence beyond words, like a whisper from the unseen, maybe that wasn't just truth. Maybe that was the voice of God. If you felt it, don't ignore it. Subscribe to this channel right now, not just to stay connected, but because this journey is spiritual. And you were led here for a reason. If you made it to the end of this video, it means you're not like the others. You're awake, you're searching, you're ready. Leave a comment below with the phrase, I heard the call. Let the world know you felt it too. And if this message reached you, leave a like, not for the algorithm, but as a signal, a mark, a silent agreement that you're part of something greater. Now, don't stop here. Watch the next video that just appeared on your screen. It holds the next piece of this puzzle. And trust me, you're going to need it.